You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
And welcome back to the Snob OS show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We want to welcome you back to another episode. This is episode 325 of the Snob OS show. And we do a little overview. We're going to talk about in the lowdown. We're going to get into OS previews. Public betas are out. We're going to talk about Apple's Manufacturing Academy in Detroit. We're going to talk about Apple caving to Trump again. We're going to talk about Apple suing Apple cinemas for second string. We're going to talk about the New York Times. The New York Times is trying to see 120 million ChatGPT user chats, and they're fighting hard to get them. And then next, we're talking about, of course, Meta is tracking women without their consent. Then we're going to get into For the Culture, talk about Sha'Carri Richardson and her latest issues. And we're going to get into the hookup, where I show you how to quickly select multiple things. So let's get right into it. And we're going to talk about the lowdown. And like I mentioned, OS 26 previews / public betas are out. So if you are itching to get a sneak preview of what Apple is going to be officially announcing in the fall, now is the time to do that. Of course, you got to be a member of the public beta program. But if you sign up, then you should be able to download the preview versions. Again, these are not the permanent final versions, but they're pretty close. Apple is saying, I think we've got a handle on it. So now we're going to release it to the public and let them give us their feedback before they officially announce it in the fall. And this goes for iOS. It goes for iPadOS. Goes for Mac OS. It goes to Watch OS. It goes to TV OS. What did I miss? Vision OS. What did I miss?
Yeah, I think you got them all.
TV OS, Vision OS, Watch OS, iPad OS, Mac OS, and then iOS.
Yep. I think that's it.
Yep. So all three of those are out for a preview. I think I've been looking at a couple of videos, and most of the people are focusing, the people who have the previews or the developer betas early, they are either pro or con with this liquid glass display. I've seen some videos and people are saying the liquid glass display is much better than when they first announced the developer betas. Now it's getting better, which is expected, because as they get better along in the betas, in the moving closer to production, they will tweak some things. Now, again, the question is Apple tweaking things as a result or in response to the negative feedback for the liquid crystal display? Or is this just normal iterations, and liquid crystal display just happens to be one of the things that they are iterating on, right? Because a lot of people are saying when the beta came out, it was hard to see and you couldn't distinguish between the menus and the background. So it sounds like Apple is responding to that. But I want to get your take. Is Apple responding to the feedback from the developer betas, specifically the negative feedback, and they're fixing the liquid crystal display across all the platforms? Or it's just normal iterations, and it just so happened coincidentally people are talking about the effectiveness of the liquid crystal display that goes across all the platforms?
I have to say it's now more like a frosted glass.
Okay.
Not necessarily liquid.
Okay.
But I think so this is the whole point of doing a developer beta. This is the whole point of doing a public beta. Okay. They want to get people's opinions on what they're about to release. So it makes sense, whether it's, good feedback or bad feedback, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Right. And I think because the liquid glass was so prominent, I think it was the first thing that was announced during WWDC when they did the keynote. Of course, people kind of clued in on that. And the renderings looked really nice. They looked really cool. It was like, ooh, new, special. But when you actually, get it onto a device and in people's hands, what Apple developers thought, hey, this works, this looks good. But again, they're in their Apple bubble. So they created it. And a lot of times, people, what's the saying? What did Erica Badu say? She's an artist. She's sensitive about her shit.
Yeah, oh,
The
yeah, right.
same thing goes for developers. They pour their blood, sweat, and tears into this stuff, and they think it's the best thing since sliced bread. So of course, it looks great to everybody. It's like the whole Spider-Man meme, everybody pointing at everybody. And once it gets out in the wild, it's like, not so much. And so that's where you saw all of the discourse and the conversation. And you saw in the different betas that they were releasing, they change it almost every time we got a new developer beta out. So I think they were listening to the feedback and they were just iterating on that and making those changes to get it to a place where people weren't complaining anymore. So now that it's in the public's hand, we'll see how actual non-developer users feel about it. They may hate it. There was like, take it back. And then, Apple have to go back to the drawing board and tweak it again. So it just really, when you put software out there like this, which most companies do, that's the whole intent, is to get feedback. And so you take that feedback, you measure it against what your initial goals were, and compare that with what public perception is or feedback is, and you make those calculated decisions based on changes from that, and you kind of go forward. So we've seen it in real time how they've changed liquid glass based on feedback. So it's, to me, it's kind of normal what people do when they see stuff. They get the feedback.
All right. And I kept saying liquid crystal is liquid glass display. So I want to make sure I messed that up. So people in the comments, it's liquid glass.
You said it wrong.
Yeah. So the important question I wanted to get to now that the public beta is out is, are you plan on downloading any of these betas if you haven't already? And if
No.
not, why?
So I have Apple developer license, so I could get the beta build. But I've gotten to the point where now I want to, say something for later. I want to be excited about something come fall, and a lot of times, with the new hardware, is it going to look different? Is it going to feel different on the new hardware? So yeah, I want to be like the newbies. I want to be surprised, about what the new changes are. We've already seen a lot of what's going on floating out there, and this has been happening since June. And so that's what, like 4 or 5 months before you actually get it in hand. And by the time you get it in hand, it's like, oh, I've seen this before. Yeah, this old news. So I kind of want to let it be fresh a little bit.
All right. All right. I have been that way for the past couple years now, but I'm interested to see if people are really talking trash about this liquid glass display, or is it ain't that big of a deal. It's like I almost want to download the preview just to see if people are just like need something to complain about with Apple, because that's how I feel. Sometimes I feel people just need something to complain about, and they pick something, and then the other people pick up on that, and then other people pick up on that. Before you know it, and yeah, before you know it, Apple needs to fix this or else, right?
Yeah.
Liquid glass ain't that far, but I've seen enough people complaining or criticizing it to be like, is it really that bad? Maybe I need to try it out, but we'll see. I don't believe I am, but if I do, it would be specifically to see how this liquid glass looks. And then I'm kind of playing myself because I know this ain't the permanent version. So it's like, do I really need to find out if this, what I'm even looking at, is the final version? So I may just skip the whole thing and just wait. I used to be heavy on it, but now not so much. And I don't know what that says about me.
Let the new kids have it. We've been doing this for a long time. It's the next crew can come in and be overly excited about being the first to get the build, because at this point in the game, I'm not.
All right. So moving on to the next story, Apple is launching their manufacturing academy in Detroit. Beginning August 19th, Apple, in partnership with Michigan State University, will host small and medium-sized businesses from across the country in Detroit for various workshops with Apple experts. The courses are designed to help American companies transition to advanced manufacturing by implementing artificial intelligence and smart manufacturing techniques. Sessions will focus on machine learning and deep learning in manufacturing, automation in the product manufacturing industry, leveraging manufacturing data to improve product quality, applying digital technologies to enhance operations, and more. So on the onset, we're like, oh, okay, Apple is, trying to get some businesses, small, medium, large, to learn about manufacturing. And oh, that's pretty nice. People are,
Mhm.
interested in manufacturing. Now, the next story may be a reason for that, but I just wanted to
Mhm.
get your take. How do you feel about Apple investing in manufacturing in the United States with this manufacturing academy?
So on the surface, this looks really good, especially in a state like Michigan, who has traditionally been heavy
In
union favored,
manufacturing.
heavily manufacturing, whether it be it's huge automotive, of course, but other things as well. And I will say, as a person who worked for a company that was based in Michigan, that was a car company, I've gone to um, one of the bigger manufacturing
Plants.
uh, buildings in Detroit. And what I will say is it's almost like a hierarchy in these plants. So I'm an engineer. I went there on engineering business, and you have on the floor, you have your
Assembly line.
assembly line, the manual labor, and you have people. My job is to screw this one screw on the door. That's all I do. I'm screwing the door, screwing the door, screwing the door. But up off of the manufacturing floor, around the assembly lines, you have these offices with the air conditioning and the very, convenient and nice. And that's where all the engineers are, all the
Mhm.
facility and plant and, uh, all of the engineers. So it's definitely a difference between a blue collar and white collar.
Mhm.
So while on the surface, this looks great and I'm excited about it, my question is, how much is this going to really impact the folks who are on the floor, or is this more impactful for the people that are upstairs kind of looking down on the floor?
Well,
Now if they're saying that they're teaching this to for both groups, then that's even better than just, I guess, on one. So that's really kind of, when you say manufacturing, most people think assembly line on the floor.
right.
And I don't know if, kind of looking at this article, it's being partnered with Michigan State. So it leads me to believe that it's more white collar than blue collar. And, as you alluded to in the next story we're going to talk about, it seems like this may be, that's why I said on the surface it looks great. But once you start to peel back the layers, I is this just kind of busy work, or just, um like something to make it look good for what they're trying to do? Or is this
Right.
going to be some real impact?
Well, the way it's presented is they're not training people to work in manufacturing. They're training small businesses who want to launch businesses that center around manufacturing. So if you're launching a
Hmm.
hat company and you want to manufacture crocodile hats, right?
Okay.
You need to make these crocodile hats. You're not importing them from China. You're not importing them from Mexico. You're going to made in the USA these crocodile caps, right?
Hmm.
You go to this Apple Manufacturing Academy, they teach you manufacturing, how to do assembly line, how to get from concept to
Okay.
this, how to manage a supply chain, how to do logistics as far as once you get them made to get them out, that sort of thing. So this is not
Gotcha. Okay.
necessarily This is not training college kids or high school kids or people trying to re-enter the workforce on how to get a manufacturing job. This is helping businesses launch companies
Mm,
that center around manufacturing. And yeah,
interesting.
and Apple's going to provide the tools. They're going to provide, well, not tools. When you come to the
The
academy in
information.
person, right? They're going to give you the information. They're going to, give you the resources. They're going to give you all those tips because Apple is a manufacturer. They have supply chains. They create products.
Mhm.
You know,
Mm,
mostly, in other countries.
yeah.
Which again leads to, and I'll just go ahead and go into it. It leads into
Mhm.
the next story. Is this not necessarily busy work like you mentioned, but is this manufacturing academy a real effort by Apple to say, hey, we want to develop the future of manufacturing businesses in the United States? Or is this a, hey, let's just launch this thing so Donald Trump and
Mhm.
them can be happy, right? And the
Mhm.
reason why I say that is because I was just coming downstairs to record this show, and Tim Cook is on TV standing next to Donald Trump talking about Apple announcing a additional $1 billion towards expanding manufacturing in the United States as the company responds. This is a quote I'm reading, as the
Mhm.
company responds to pressure from Donald Trump to manufacture more of its products in the United States. The move builds upon the company's initial plan the first time
Mm.
he got them to invest 500 billion in the United States over the next 4 years, which is where I think, quote me if I'm wrong, in that 500 billion, the first pledge, I think out of that came this Apple Manufacturing Academy. Now, I could be wrong. I could be speculating. That's what I'm guessing.
It
Uh,
sounds right. Sounds plausible.
right. Like I said, the move builds upon Apple's initial plan to invest 500 billion in the United States over the next 4 years, and includes a new. I knew it. See, and includes a new American manufacturing program that the company says will bring more of Apple's supply chain and advanced manufacturing to the United States. As part of this investment, Apple has agreed to an expanded partnership with Corning to manufacture 100% of the iPhone and Apple Watch cover glass in Kentucky. It will also work with Samsung at its chip fabrication in Austin, Texas, quote, to launch an innovative new technology for making chips, which has never been used before anywhere in the world, according to Apple's press release. So I was right. Like, well, let me not say that. I was right in the 500 billion. One of the verticals, if you will, one of the
Mhm.
programs is this manufacturing academy. In addition to that, Apple has pledged with, in I guess, in partnership or in fear of Donald Trump,
Mhm.
this Trump administration, to give an additional $100 billion. So I guess
So,
the rhetorical question, but is Apple like really trying to partner to pull manufacturing back to the United States, or is this kind of like a, let's just give this couple dollars so this dude won't mess with us no more?
so this whole thing, everything is about image to me. It's all about a facade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest. Is a manufacturing academy, it takes $100 billion to do a
Well,
manufacturing academy?
well, I think one of the, what do you call it?
One of the initiatives
Yeah, that's
under
what the
this.
word. That's what I was talking
Okay.
about. One of the initiatives that came out of the initial 500 billion was this manufacturing academy, right? Again, the reason why that's important to me is because, did Apple do this of its own volition? Was this always in the plans for Apple, or did Apple just spin this up in response to tariff pressure from this administration?
I
Right.
think
That's
they
the
spun
first
this
100.
up from I think they spun it up for, to say, "Look, see, we said we're bringing manufacturing back to America. See, we're doing a manufacturing academy." And my thing is kind of linking these two stories together. They're giving this information to these small businesses, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And that's great. We love information.
mhm,
Information helps us progress.
mhm,
But is there any capital behind this? Because if these are small and medium sized businesses,
mhm,
do they have the money? Do
mhm.
they have the resources
Just take a break.
to to
and go to Detroit.
One, to take a break and go to Detroit, and two, to take what they actually learned and implement it. Do they have the money to say, yeah, we're going to make a small manufacturing facility? Do they have the money to do this? Because
Uh,
it's one
what?
thing to get the information, which is great because you need to know how to do this. The second part of this is money behind it. If they are investing at this point now a total of $600 billion,
Mm-hmm.
can they not take some of this money and give it in grants
Well,
to
if
these
they
small business owners to
what?
help them implement this stuff? Because at this point, it just seems like to me, with a lot of stuff that's going on with this administration, people are funneling all this money in, and who is actually getting this money? Because I think this guy has already said that, you know, some country gave him all this money and they say he could do whatever he wants with my money. So he thinks this is his money
When you
to
say
do what
he,
he
you mean
wants with
Trump,
it. Yes. So I'm trying to figure out, is a part of this hundred, I mean, one, not $1 billion, 100 billion dollars.
right? That's an additional 100 billion,
That's an additional on top of the 500 they've already promised.
right?
So I haven't heard about, like I said, any grants
No,
being given to these businesses. Again, the manufacturing academy is great, but if these companies, because they're for small and medium-sized companies,
right?
the people who Trump and these people have courted their vote for, to say we're going to help you, we're going to bring this stuff back, are they actually giving this money to these people?
No.
Because again, it's an investment, right? So if you're
Well,
investing in the country and the growth, you teach them how to do it, but then you also give them the capital and the resources to actually implement it so that they can spin these businesses up, they can make money, they can hire people, they can get back to the economy. This whole cycle of things. And that's why I'm like wondering, like, again, is this just for show, or are they actually planning on, this is a lot of money, a lot of money, and they said it's an investment.
well, so
So
you got to be careful when you say medium-sized businesses because according to a quick search, a medium-sized business typically has between 50 and 250 employees, right? So
okay.
when we think of small businesses, when we think of medium business, think of small
Mm-hmm.
business, think of like maybe 1 to 5 employees, right? When you think of
Yeah.
a medium business, I would think of like maybe 10 to about 40 or 50. But a
Mm-hmm.
medium sized business could be 250 employees and they can make
Okay.
gobs of money and still be
Yeah.
considered a medium sized business. So maybe these upper medium sized businesses can afford the time to send
Gotcha.
people to Detroit and then have money to invest based on what they've learned after they quote unquote graduate
Finished.
from
Yeah.
the right from the academy, right? But again, I think drives the point that if Apple was really interested in investing in manufacturing, like you mentioned, they would invest in a good way to invest would be to invest in small and medium businesses directly, as in cutting checks, right? Which
Right.
since they're not, then that leads me to believe that, yeah, they want to share some information, but they really ain't trying to, you know, what's the word? Like really trying to see this. I don't want to say that. I don't want to assume. I get the impression that they spun this up in response to the tariff pressure from this administration, and then this additional $100 billion. I'm not sure what was the reasoning or what was
Motivation
the
behind
the
it.
motivation behind that. Reading a little bit into the story, Apple revealed last week that Trump's tariffs could add another $1.1 billion to its costs during the September quarter, adding it to the 800 million it has already spent on the levies. Trump has also introduced new reciprocal tariffs that affect products imported from a wide range of countries, including Vietnam, which manufactures Macs, iPads, and watches. So this is to Apple's credit, to Tim Cook's credit, this is a strategic
He's playing the
move
game.
and they're playing the game, right? But at what cost, right?
Yeah.
when this administration leaves and a different administration comes in with different
If
ideas,
they leave.
is Apple going to keep this up, or are they going to be like, yeah, we changed our mind, we're not giving $600 billion, we're only going to do two, and then it's like, all right, well, why did you scale it back? I thought you was investing in manufacturing. So we'll see, I
It's the
guess.
same, but it's the same playbook from the George Floyd stuff. All
Hmm.
these DEI companies, they hired all these people, they're investing, they're doing all these programs. And now that this administration is against that, they've rolled it all back.
Hmm.
So that's why I say it's one of those things where, to me, and I'm usually yay, this is good. They have good intentions. They're altruistic. But I don't think any dealings with this administration is altruistic. I think it's all for self-serving purposes.
Okay.
And I get it. I get this is how you play the game. But at the same time, while you're over here playing the game,
Hmm.
the regular folks, us
Hmm.
who have to buy your goods and services, are the ones that's going to suffer, because they said that these tariffs are going to add another 1.8 billion. So they're creeping up on $2 billion in tariffs
Hmm.
that they are not going to eat, even though this administration has basically told them to eat it. They're not going to eat it. They're going
Hmm.
to pass it on to us. And this is just one company. This is just one sector. This is happening across the board. So we all, and we've already seen it take place. When I say we're the consumer, the American consumer, we're the one that's paying for this while they try and make things look good and look pretty. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
I saw someone say that they think in 2020 we all died from COVID and we're living in hell.
That.
And every day some new news comes out. I'm like, you know what? They might be right. They might just be right, because I yeah, I think, again, because they're having a big show of it at the White House and shaking hands, and I think it's all just a smoke show, a smoke
Well,
and mirror show. Yeah.
we shall see. Hopefully, we benefit, whether Apple is getting pressured by Trump or not. Hopefully, we can
Mm,
benefit, but we will. Time will only tell if we if we get something out of this or not, which should be the focus. But
right.
yeah,
I don't think we
it
are,
is what it
but
is. Business is
hopefully,
business.
fingers crossed.
All
Yay.
right. All right. So the last story I got in the lowdown: Apple is suing Apple Cinemas. Um, yeah, read that. Like, you would assume, I would assume that Apple Cinemas is part of Apple, but not the
Uh-huh.
case. Apple is suing the owner of the Apple Cinemas theater chain over alleged trademark infringement. Apple alleges that Apple Cinemas and Sand Media have made efforts to capitalize off the highly regarded Apple brand in connection with the aggressive nationwide expansion, and that they have, quote, refused to engage with Apple's repeated efforts to resolve the matter amicably. Now, I find it hard to believe that Apple is going to try to resolve anything amicably, especially when they feel like they are the,
Wrong party
right,
in this.
right. But I mean, let me read a little bit more into it, right? Apple
Okay.
Cinemas has, which is, for the record, not connected to Apple at all. Apple Cinemas has operated, quote, outside a few suburbs and city outskirts in New England, right? All the way on the other
Mhm.
side of the country, right?
Okay.
However, Apple Cinemas recently opened a theater in the San Francisco Bay Area within 50 miles of Apple's Cupertino headquarters, and plans to open another soon. So, to me, that's kind of like all right, well, Apple may be being a bully.
Mhm.
Anybody, I can use the word Apple. Apple is a thing, right?
Mhm.
You've trademarked Apple as a company, but you ain't trademarked apples, right? There's
Right.
plenty other businesses that have Apple in their name that
That
have
actually
nothing,
sell physical apples.
right, or not, right? But I think, and Apple, as from what I can understand from this story, they've kind of let them cook.
Mm.
pun intended, because they were on the other side of the country. I think
Mhm.
Apple has finally said, "Hey, wait a minute now we see what y'all doing," because this
Mhm.
company has opened a Apple Cinemas 50 miles from Cupertino, right?
Mhm.
Which, if you are a tourist and you don't know nothing about Apple, and you
Mhm.
go to you go to San Francisco for the first time, and you want to on your list is to go to the what they call it? What they call what's the nickname for Apple headquarters? The
Apple
dome,
Park?
Apple Park. What do they call it? The saucer, flying saucer, right?
Uh-huh.
You go there and you be like, oh, Apple has the Apple Cinemas. We might as well check that out too, assuming that they're connected. And I think
Right.
that's where Apple's like, wait a minute now, let's hold up. Let's we let y'all cook over there on the other side of the country. Now y'all in our background and backyard, and now y'all need to pay the piper. So my
Yeah.
question to you is this a legit gripe from Apple, or is Apple reaching and they just don't want nobody even using Apple in the name of their business?
So I don't think it's a stretch because you're bringing in a company with a very similar name
Mm-hmm.
in the vicinity
Mm-hmm.
when you haven't done that before and
Mm-hmm.
you were literally not only on the opposite coast of the country but the
Mm-hmm.
opposite end. New England is all the way at the top
Mm-hmm.
of the East Coast and Cupertino is
And peep
all
this,
the other
right?
way.
I
Uh-huh.
went to the appleCinemas.com,
Uh-huh.
and their logo is kind of hard to see, but
Uh-huh.
they have the word Apple Cinemas, and just to the left of the word Apple, there's a logo of a apple. Now the apple it doesn't look like the Apple logo that
Mhm.
we know and love,
Mhm.
but they are using an
Apple.
apple, which has nothing to do with movies. It has everything to do with the word Apple, but I could see how the company Apple is
Mhm.
like, wait a minute now. Come on. Come on. Y'all just can't think that we were going to let this one slide.
And also, I have to say as well, Apple with their Apple TV Plus and
Mhm.
recently with all of the awards that Apple has just gotten from the Emmys. They had F1, so that was like a big deal.
Mhm.
So I could see where it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this might be a problem
Yeah.
because you're coming a little too close to home now.
Mhm.
A little too close. And I'm looking, like I said, I'm at the website as well, and it looks like they have quite a few locations, but they just now
Mhm.
decided to come over to the West Coast. It seems a
Yeah.
little suspicious
Yeah, it does. And I
because
don't
if you're
know.
going to like expand, typically you expand in the general area. So like maybe like going down the coast,
Mhm.
maybe we're gonna come, down to New York or
Mhm.
Philly, kind of in that vein. And they're like,
Mhm.
nah, we're gonna shoot 3,000 miles away and we're gonna set
Yeah.
up shop over there. So it seemed a little suspicious, if
Yeah,
you ask
I don't
me.
know. I don't know what they thought they were going to do in trying to. Seems like I don't know. Maybe it's provocation. Maybe they're trying to provoke them. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they want this problem. So, all
Well.
right, that's it for the lowdown. We're going to move into second string, and the New York Times wants to see over 120 million Chat GPT user chats. And why do they want these? Because according to the New York Times, they want to make sure ChatGPT is using our data the way they say they're using our data. So
Hmm.
let me just read this passage. OpenAI is preparing to raise what could be its final defense to stop the New York Times from digging through a spectacularly broad range of ChatGPT logs to hunt for any copyright infringing outputs that could become the most damning evidence in the hotly watched case. So basically, what's happening is the New York Times has brought suit claiming that OpenAI may be doing some nefarious stuff with the logs, and we want to see them. ChatGPT said no, no, no. Then August 7th, in a joint letter, both sides requested to hold a confidential settlement. Ars Technica confirmed with the NYT's legal team that the conference is not about settling the case, but instead was scheduled to settle one of the most disputed aspects of the case: news plaintiffs searching through millions of ChatGPT logs. That means it's possible that this week, ChatGPT users will have a much clearer understanding of whether their private chats might be accessed in the lawsuit. In the meantime, AI has broken down the quote highly complex process required to make deleted chats searchable in order to block New York Times requests for broader access. So it's almost like a multi-pronged thing, right? New York Times wants these chats so they can make sure everything is legit. OpenAI is blocking them or wants to block them because, according to OpenAI, New York Times should not be able to read user chats because
Right.
I don't want the New York Times looking at my stuff, right? And I'm pretty sure there
Right.
are a lot of users who don't. So it's almost like this dance between making sure OpenAI is on the up and up and
Mhm.
violating people's proper privacy. It's
Right.
like, how are you going to violate my privacy to make sure my privacy ain't been violated? You violated it, right?
Right.
So
And my thing is like, who is the New York Times to think that they are should be the overlords to look through people's private chats?
Mhm,
Now, I get that they're a news organization and I get that there is definitely investigative journalism.
mhm,
I get all of that. But who is the New York Times itself?
mhm. Well, they're a journalistic organization, and they, I
So
guess,
then that means Washington Post can do this as well.
if they wanted to.
And that's the thing. You're opening up private information
Mhm,
to people who they're a news organization. They
mhm.
can publish whatever. If they get access to it, they can publish
And that's
whatever in their paper,
and that's
right?
part of the problem, right? That's part of the challenge. I don't know if it's OpenAI's challenge. I think it's more of, do we, as the users who potentially would have these chat logs reviewed by the New York Times, are
Mhm.
we okay with allowing New York Times to look at these laws in the hopes that New York Times is going to hold OpenAI's feet to the fire and make sure that they are doing what they said they're doing with our data? So it's almost like a, which one comes first?
Right.
Does our privacy get violated in order to ensure our privacy ain't being violated?
Or
That's
is it the New York Times just, hey, they're in there looking around to see privacy and they
mhm,
find something that's a great story and say, ooh, this would be a great story. And you've given them access to it so they can go and write about it.
right,
So, I mean, it's to me, even though I don't have very much confidence in democracy and the government,
right,
this seems like it would be something that would go through the governmental like oversight
mhm,
where they'd have a third party, you know, organization that has to maintain certain legal parameters to go in and do this research or these checks, because it sounds like the New York Times themselves want to go in and just look at people's chats.
mhm,
So to me, if you're trying to protect people's privacy,
mhm,
you would want to have a third party that has the ethical boundaries to say what we see in here or what we're looking for, or for people to stay within the bounds of
mhm,
what they're looking for. Because like I said, you give 120 million people's private chats to a
mhm.
news organization to go in and look around.
Yeah, let
Say
me
they do find that privacy has been breached, but what else are they
yeah.
gonna do with that,
Yeah,
right?
let me read this passage. Plaintiffs mean New York Times. Plaintiffs seek 120 million records from OpenAI's offline storage system, which is composed of individual conversation logs. The logs are not rows in a spreadsheet. They are large, unstructured data files, meaning they do not follow a predefined format consisting
Mhm.
of over 5,000 words, even for very short conversations. The logs must be decompressed before being searched and contain identifying information, e.g., addresses and other private information, e.g., passwords, that must be scrubbed before making it available. So basically, OpenAI is saying, hey, this ain't just going to be some like, here's Terrance's logs. It's just a bunch of words, and it's going to take a long time to do that. For instance, for OpenAI, this process is highly complex, requiring it to retrieve each log from the tens of billions of logs in OpenAI's offline data storage. The company will then incur costs of storing those logs, making the NYT's request for 120 million user conversations 6 times as expensive as OpenAI's. And I think, let me give it a little bit more context. OpenAI is like, all right, we ain't giving you 120 million. We'll give you like 20 million. But New York Times is like, nope, it's important that we get 120 million logs in order to do what they claim to do. Again, like I mentioned, the New York Times goal is to make sure that OpenAI is not using any sort of trademark infringements or stealing people's content in order to train or whatever with their AI models. So again, the question is like, do we trust the New York Times to do this? Or is this, like you mentioned, is this the New York Times searching for stuff that may benefit them?
In a previous career, I was a ETL developer.
What is that?
And that's extract, transform, and load.
Okay.
So it was my job to take tons of unstructured data. Sometimes it was in databases, sometimes it was in different file formats, to take that data, to parse it, and to create interfaces, programs that ran to do other things. So as a person who has extensive knowledge on what it takes to import this type of data, that's why ETL developer, extract. So you're extracting the data from one location, you're transforming it, making it legible, and then the L part is load. You're loading it into a platform that is actually usable. This is a huge undertaking. Companies have whole verticals that on my team and in my group, we were only on the corporate HR management side of the business. And it was about 15 of us who did that work. And that's just one group. And the company that I work for, huge, ginormous company. So the New York Times has ulterior motives, because even if they got access to this, they wouldn't even be able to search or it would take a hot minute to get all that data from them. And the way that they're saying that this data is formatted, the effort it would take to get this in a readable, searchable format for them to even look at this is a huge undertaking. And I mean, this is like a years long thing. This isn't just something that says, hey, we decided to do this. So it now, in my mind, thinking on that, it's, what are they really after? What is their real intent behind this? I mean, it may not even be to even get this data. Maybe it's to prove that they can get it and use that for something else, down the line, to set the precedent to be able to get information like this. Because again, if this is, just think about what you use when you're in ChatGPT, the way you type, the content that you get back from it. So you're getting these private logs. So you're not only getting the person's input, but you're getting the output from ChatGPT. So just the level effort that it would take to gather this information, parse it, and make it searchable is a huge undertaking. In some of the projects that I worked on, even on the database side of things, it's been hundreds and millions of rows of data. And that's just the row. That's not even the column in the row. So you could have 100 million rows, you could have 100 billion columns, all of data. And a lot of times, like I said, I was on the HR side of it. So it was like people putting in information. And people are weird. If you don't format the input a certain way, to say if you're putting in an address. No, if say a lot of times the hardest thing was telephone number. Some people use dashes, some people use dots, some people use parentheses, some people don't. Some people just put the whole thing with no delineation. And so just think of just that one particular element of a telephone number and the ways that people can enter a telephone number. And now you have to be able to read that field and parse it and transform it into a consistent, because that's what you're going to have to do with this data. You're going to not only have to format this unstructured, but you're going to have to put it in a format that's uniform, so you'll be able to even search it. So I don't know what the New York Times is trying to do, but I don't think this is what this lawsuit is for. I don't think that's what it's for, because to get 120 million users records, this is insane. This
Well,
is a huge undertaking. A
well, what
huge
if
undertaking.
right? But does that negate the cause? What I mean by that,
No,
it right. So
not at
now,
all.
their ulterior motive, according to this, that you can kind of glean is, uh, um, so OpenAI has trying to compromise. Say we're not getting 120 million, we'll give you 20 million, right?
Mhm.
And they're saying that a sample, they being OpenAI, suggested that a sample of 20 million logs would be sufficient to determine how frequently ChatGPT users may be using the chatbot to regurgitate articles and circumvent news sites' paywalls.
Mm.
My assumption is, again, I haven't been to the New York Times. My assumption is they, like other
Everything is
Washington,
behind the paywall.
behind a paywall. And what they are trying to figure out is if users like you and I are using ChatGPT to get around those paywalls by saying, hey, read me this story from the
Mhm.
New York Times.
Mhm.
ChatGPT jumps through the paywall, does his thing, spits that out to the user. New York Times don't get their money, right?
Right. I can see
So
it.
right. So imagine if you were running
Yeah.
New York Times trying to get them subscriptions, and then I am using ChatGPT. It's like psych, and goes around that.
You're
I'd be
not getting
like,
this $5.99 from
right,
me.
right. So I'd be like, hey man, we need to do something about this. So time will tell what happens with this. It'll be interesting because, like you said, like you can imagine that this
Yeah.
would create precedent for other news outlets to do the same thing. So,
Yeah. And they'd
all
have
right,
to hire a separate company to do
yeah.
this work.
Well, maybe
There's no way
they
New York Times will be able to do it.
maybe they build a New York Times for it.
Maybe.
All right. So moving on to the second story in second string, a federal jury found on Friday that Meta violated the California Invasion of Privacy Act, the state's wiretap law, by collecting data from a period tracker app without user consent. The lawsuit was filed in 2021 against Flow Health, maker of the app for tracking periods, ovulation, and pregnancy. Facebook owner Meta, Google, and app analytics company Flurry were added as defendants later. The plaintiffs settled with Flow Health, Google, and Flurry before the trial, leaving Meta as the only remaining defendant. So I just wanted to get your opinions on this because you did mention back in the past that you were not putting your data in none of these apps. So it sounds like you were vindicated, at least from Meta's standpoint. So I just want to get your take. What do you think about this?
So this was back around the beginning of the pandemic, I believe, that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, because I did have an app that I used and I had to request to have my data removed. And then I deleted my account. I know Apple has one of these. I've gone old school with, tracking things,
Mm-hmm.
because when this happened, Handmaid's Tale was at its peak. Um, we had these companies talking about, the people that were, I think, what's the guy? I think the Peter Thiel, I think
Mm-hmm.
he owns one of these apps. It
Mm-hmm.
might even be Flow, I'm not sure, but I think he owns one of them, and we know kind of what his deal is. And a lot of women were telling other women to get your data off these apps and
Mm-hmm.
stop using these apps,
Mm-hmm.
because what we were using it for was for health,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a bodily function that we have no control over. This, if you're a woman, this is what happens and you have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so using this tool to help, you know, de-stress at least one aspect of your life, cool, great. But a lot of the conversation around floating around in the spaces that I was in was that the people who have access to this data, it could be used for some really nefarious things. Again, Handmaid's Tale was really prevalent this time, and people were already freaking out about, Donald Trump being in office and what this meant for, women and women's health. And I think seeing the way the rights have been stripped away from women and the way that they're forcing women to, we talked about the young lady who was forced to, carry the baby, all these things. All that to say is, none of this surprises me. If anybody is surprised by this, they haven't been paying attention, it hasn't been on their radar, or they've clearly, just decided to kind of opt out of this whole thing. But I am not surprised about this. I don't regret my decision to step away from those apps at all, because I saw this coming.
Right. So
I
let me
saw that this could be an issue.
Yeah, so let me read a little bit more into this to give you a better understanding. The plaintiff's trial brief said that Flow allowed Google and Meta to eavesdrop on users' private in app communications between November 2016 and February 2019. Flow app users had to complete an onboarding survey requiring them to, quote, select a goal indicating whether they were pregnant, want to be pregnant, or want to track their period, as well as input other information about their pregnancy or menstrual cycle, the brief said. Flow, the company, promised not to disclose this information, but gave access to Google and Meta via, quote, custom app events sent through their respective software development kits incorporated in the Flow app. Each of the defendants had their own purpose for collecting and using Flow user data, the brief said. Flow used this information to acquire new app users through advertising and marketing, including advertisements based on Flow app users' reproductive goals, pregnant, getting pregnant, or just want to track their menstrual cycle.
Mhm.
Flow also sold access to these events sent through the SDKs to other third parties for profit. Google and Meta separately used the data they intercepted from their own for their own commercial purposes, including to feed, quote, the machine learning algorithms that power each of their respective advertising networks. So this is kind of, to me, it's kind of like,
Mhm.
kind of a little bit like the New York Times trying to
Mhm.
force OpenAI to show us what you're doing.
Uh-huh.
This is an example of what happens when companies are just doing whatever with your data,
Yeah.
sensitive data as women's reproductive health. They're using
And I
that
don't
data to
trust
get paid.
anybody's word. They said that they weren't going to do it. They could
Hmm.
change their freaking minds.
Hmm.
They could
Yep.
change their terms and conditions. They
Yep.
could do all of that. And then what are you going to do? You're just going to be SOL. And let me correct it before any of the incel people come back. Peter Thiel, he does not own a period tracking app, but he did back an app um, called 28.
Okay.
So there's
All
that.
right.
But still, the fact that these companies, so the thing with OpenAI and New York Times, they're trying to get the information to see if anything was stolen. The difference here is these companies sold this data. They
Hmm.
sold your data.
Hmm.
So that's how they got access.
Right.
And probably in the terms of agreements that you just clicked agree on, because you want to use the app, you want to use a service, it's probably in there somewhere that said, yeah, sure, you can sell it. I don't care. But it's one of those things where this type of information is very important, is very personal, is very private. And for them to, for financial gain, just decide to sell it to, these other companies. And
It's
we've
messed up.
seen what, we all remember the Cambridge Analytica stuff. So we know that it's not just data. Data is used to tell a story. And I think that's what people forget. They just think data is just numbers, it's just text. No. Cambridge Analytica told us, it showed us in real time, especially people who aren't in this space, that you can build a profile of a person, not just any person, a specific person. You get enough pieces from different sources, you can build a complete profile of an actual person.
Right.
So they now have your phone number, your address, your birth date, your picture. Now they got your credit card information, your flight. I just got an email. There was a data breach from an airline that I've traveled with before. And so the thing is, separately is bad. But when you have all these things that are floating around and you pull it together to build a profile, I don't even think we've been able to comprehend, I don't want to be Mad Max doom and gloom, but the reality is having all these breaches and all these different pieces of data being sold, and brokers, they want specific things. They want to know your habits. They're building a profile on you as a person, what makes you you. And what are they going to do with that? Nothing good. Especially if it earns the money, they're going to do whatever
Right.
it takes to get the money. So
All right. Well, time
not
will tell.
surprised.
Time will tell as to what's going on with all this data, specifically around these apps. Of course, they got a large settle, well, not a large settlement. The case favored in favor of the plaintiffs who brought this case on. So we'll have to see what kind of damages Meta will have
Yeah.
to pay.
Yeah.
All right, so that is it for second string. We're moving into for the culture, and Sha'Carri Richardson is in trouble. Well, not in trouble. She was arrested over the weekend, I want to think, for domestic violence against her boyfriend. Now, I haven't seen the video, but apparently they were having a disagreement in an airport, either on the way to or coming from a track event. It again, I have to. I'm paraphrasing based on what I've heard. They're having an argument in the airport. Her boyfriend, who is Christian Coleman, who is also a track and field star, was walking away. Again, we don't see what happened before that, but he's walking away, and she is kind of bumping him and uh, 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 bumping him with her body, pushing him, and then she takes her headphones off or takes them off of her and throws them at him. That's what's caught on the camera. Cops come in, um, arrest her, charge her with domestic violence. I guess she posts bail, gets out, and either goes on to the track event, or this is happening after they're coming back home from the event. So fast forward to recently, her boyfriend, like I mentioned, Christian Coleman, who's also a track star, comes out for her defense. Comes out in her defense. He says, "quote For me personally, I feel like it was a sucky situation all around. I don't feel like she should have been arrested. I mean, people have discussions and emotions and stuff like that. She has things that she needs to work on for herself, of course. So do I. I do too. So everybody. So does everybody. But I'm the type of guy who's in the business of extending grace and mercy and love." So, what is your take on this whole Sha'Carri Richardson
Oh,
and
Sha'Carri.
domestic violence and her being arrested for it? Was she arrested because that's the right thing to do? Or is it because she's Sha'Carri Richardson? And then you add on the fact that, domestic violence is not good in any shape, form, or fashion. But I don't hear a lot of people kind of kicking up dust about domestic violence for domestic violence because maybe it's a woman versus
Mhm.
if if Christian Coleman was saw bumping her and threw his
Mhm.
headphones at her, would this be a different outcome? What's your take on the whole deal?
I just feel so bad. She she gets it together and she's doing really great. She's doing really well, and then something like this happened. I hate to say it, if the roles were reversed, the guy definitely would have been, if he wasn't arrested, he definitely would have been detained.
Mhm,
And based on what she did, it sounds like this was I haven't seen the video either, but it sounds like she should have been detained, because if she was, assaulting him or pushing, because it says in the article she was accused of shoving him and
mhm,
throwing headphones at him.
mhm,
So, I mean, it sounds like this wasn't something that was done because of who she is, but
mhm,
because of what she did. And at the bottom of the article, it says all this happened after she came to fourth place at the meet she was at. And it sounded like, based on what he was saying, he was, if you read between the lines, they were having disagreement, they were having an argument,
mhm,
and tempers were flared probably on both sides.
mhm,
She sounds like she got physical with it.
mhm,
He
mhm,
doesn't say if he did or what was said or what was done,
mhm,
but and then compile that with her, not even meddling at the
mhm.
track event. All those things kind of coming together. Um, and like you said, it is a sucky situation, but you know, your actions have consequences, especially if they are negative. So
Especially if you are a famous person. That's my whole thing. It's like with Sha'Carri Richardson, it's like, are these instances involving her, not just the incidences that got her suspended because of the situation with her mother and
mm,
being banned because of weed, not just because of her, attitude. Sometimes people claim her attitude is too much, and then this instance. And then there was another instance where she got kicked off of an airplane because she felt the stewardess, that they don't call them that anymore. What do they call them
flight
now?
attendants.
Flight attendants. I'm sorry. Flight attendants were disrespecting her, because she was using her phone and the stewardess told her, of course, routine, turn your phone
You have to
off.
turn your phone off.
And I guess Sha'Carri wasn't listening or wasn't following instructions.
Mm,
And then they escorted her off the plane. And of course, the people, of course, as people do, cheering as they are escorting her off the plane. So I'm saying all that to say, I hope all of these individual instances either don't or aren't a microcosm of who she is as a person, right? Because you
yeah,
don't want the hothead temper tantrum moniker to follow you
yeah,
everywhere. But
yeah.
you're not doing yourself any favor by
Favors.
always getting into all of these instances
And the
where it
fact that she
appears,
is and the fact that she is famous.
right.
I mean, and she has a very distinctive look, especially with the hair.
Hmm.
Girl, they know you, babe. You were at
Yeah.
the Olympics. You won
Yeah.
gold medals. People know you.
Right. Right.
And so, and at the same time, I also recognize that she's human as well. And we all, you know, all of our moments aren't our greatest moments. We
Right.
all have, things that we do that we wish we hadn't done.
Right.
We all have, we can all have emotional outbursts.
Sure.
And you mentioned probably about 4 or 5 different times. I think it's exacerbated because of who she is.
Sure.
And if
But
anybody thinks back on their life, they've had more than 4 or 5 outbursts
right.
of,
But my name
things that
ain't
are emotional when they're angry. But I'm not
I
a
ain't
famous track
Sha'Carri Rich.
star.
Exactly.
Right.
I think that's the
Right.
ultimate thing. It's like,
Right.
maybe she just has again, I'm not telling nobody to chill out. I ain't telling nobody to calm down, right?
Right.
But be
Because
careful.
what you don't want to do is tell a woman, especially a black woman, to relax.
Right.
'Cause that's the last thing that's gonna happen.
But at the same time, if you keep getting into these issues or
Yeah.
instances where you're I don't want to say temper, but your emotions,
Emotions. Yeah.
right, are leading you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. One, we got to figure out a way to, I don't
Get
know.
some emotional regulation.
Oh, right.
Regulation. Some
And
tools.
you just can't do it because you are a world famous athlete, not just
Everybody know you,
United
girl.
States, not just United States athlete, a world athlete. So too much
Yeah.
is given, much is
Much is
required.
required. Yeah.
And you just can't be like, again, everybody's human, but you can't be the, oh, I'm just like everybody else, when you want to
You are
absolve
not like
yourself.
everybody else.
But then when you want us to applaud you and laud you with all of these platitudes,
Adorations. Yeah.
adoration, because you are who you are, it's like you got to pick one. You either a
Yeah.
superstar or you ain't. You're either a regular person or you ain't. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of these athletes, again, I can't speak for athletes, but it's got to be a dance that you have to, and it's
A
probably
very
maddening.
needle you have to thread. Very fine needle you have to thread.
Against your will. You may not want to do it. You just want to be Sha'Carri Richardson one day, but you ain't Sha'Carri Richardson. You are Sha'Carri Richardson.
You are the Sha'Carri Richardson.
Right. So that comes
Yeah.
with some stuff you're gonna have to
Yeah.
swallow. And
Yeah. I
unfortunately,
really hope that she gets, again, the she finds someone to help her with the tools she needs to regulate her emotions and how to manage it, because
yeah,
I can only imagine, what this girl has to go through and the things that come at her. And at the same time, as the adult, it's your responsibility to make sure that you know how to handle these situations so they don't mess up your bag.
yeah. And shout out to her boyfriend for defending her. I think, well, let me not say that, because would I be saying shout out to Sha'Carri for defending her boyfriend who was beating up
Yeah.
on her in the airport? I don't
Yeah.
know if I would
You
say
would
that. So
you
I
wouldn't?
don't. This whole thing is all weird, right? So
It's
I
so
don't
weird.
know.
Yeah. I just hope she gets the help she needs and learns the tools that she needs to make sure that she, can regulate and handle her emotions going forward.
Yep. All right, so that's going to do it for the culture. We're going to move into the hookup, and I want to show you or tell you how you can quickly select multiple items with a two-finger gesture. And this is typically for your iPad and your iPhone. If
Mhm.
you're like in Apple Mail, or if you're in like Apple Messages, if you're in Reminders, Notes, all of these i Apple native apps, and you want to be able to select multiple notes or multiple messages, instead of selecting edit and then clicking on each one of those things that you want to delete, move, whatever, you can take your two fingers and touch the top thing you want to select, and then drag your fingers down or drag your fingers up to quickly select multiple items. And then you can quickly trash them, move them, organize them, mark them as read, mark them as unread, whatever you wanted to do. So that is my hookup. There is a super quick way to select multiple things by using your two fingers and dragging down the line to select all of those items. So definitely
I
check it
use it
out.
all the time.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Cool.
I use
Cool.
that all the time,
All right. All right.
especially in my email.
All right. So that is my hookup for the week. And that's going to do it for this week's show. Nika, tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere.
And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH. If you want to comment, connect, share, support the show, please go to snoboscast.com to get the details. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast. Every week we do an additional show specifically for our snobist community that is on Patreon. We're going to start that show now. So those who are listening, I'm going to cut you off so we can give our Patreon people what they are paying for. And again, if you want to get in, definitely go to patreon.com/snoboscast. So until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.